Hello, my friends. Did you know that the sun and the moon will exist forever? Well, we did a video a while back on the earth and that it would never cease to exist. But the Bible says the same thing about the sun and the moon. And I'll show you those verses. Stay with us. I think this is very interesting, and I think you'll think so as well. My friends, did you know that the sun and the moon will never cease to exist? And we did a video not too long back about how that the earth would never cease to exist. The Bible said in Ecclesiastes 1, verse number 4, one generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. And we dealt with Bible verses that talk about the fact that the earth would exist forever. And then I pointed out what the Bible means in some of the verses that say the earth would perish. Just like, Genesis, or rather, John chapter 3, verse 16. John says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish." Whosoever believeth in him should not perish. Well, a soul perishes, but does not cease to exist. And this earth will perish, but never pass out of existence. Well, the Bible says the same thing about the sun and the moon. Let me give you a couple of verses from Psalm, the 89th chapter. The psalmist writes, he says the 89th chapter is a fairly long chapter, but around verse number 36, it says, "His seed shall endure forever." And then it goes on to say, "And his throne as the sun before me." And a little bit further, "It shall be established forever as the moon." It shall be established forever as the moon. So these verses in Psalm 89 declare the sun and the moon will exist forever. So we have Bible verses saying the earth will exist forever, the sun and the moon will exist forever. Now, we could give other verses. I'll give you at least one more from the book of Psalms, and there are others in Jeremiah and other places that say essentially the same thing. But in the book of Psalm, chapter 148, it begins with the familiar phrase, familiar words, "Praise ye the Lord," and which is found a lot in the beginning and ending of some of the last Psalms. But he mentions in verse number 3, "Praise ye him, sun and moon." Sun and moon. And then he says in verse 6, "He hath also established them forever and ever. He hath made a decree which shall not pass." Now, these are just two passages, and the Bible says in the mouth of two or three witnesses shall every word be established. And so at least two passages I've given you that demonstrate or that say that the sun and the moon will never cease to exist. Now, I know some of you are wondering, but what about the Bible verses that talk about the sun turning to darkness and the moon turning to blood? Acts chapter 2 mentions this. Joel chapter 2 mentions this. I think it's Isaiah, chapter 13, I believe it is, it mentions the sun and the moon turning dark. The book of Revelation talks about the sun turning to darkness, and the book of, a lot of the prophets mention these sorts of things. But let me point something out to you, my friends. In the book of Revelation, the sun goes dark more than one time. In the 6th chapter, I believe it's about verse number 12, he says, "And I beheld when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind." And so that passage talks about, from Revelation chapter 6, talks about how the sun would be turned dark and the moon would be turned to blood. There are verses like this throughout the Bible. But if you read the book of Revelation, in chapter 6, the sun and the moon are turned dark. But when you read in chapter 8, part of the sun is turned dark again. Well, I thought it was already dark. It was dark in the 6th chapter. And here it is, part of it, only a part of it, according to the Bible, turned dark in the 8th chapter. But then we read in the 9th chapter of the book of Revelation, where the Bible says that the star, and the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit, and he opened the bottomless pit. And the Bible goes on to tell us that a smoke comes up out of the pit. And it says the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. So here we have the sun dark in chapter number 6. Then in chapter 8, part of it is darkened. Well, that proves that it hadn't stayed dark for, in other words, the sun obviously, by going dark, did not cease to exist in chapter 6. How else could part of it go dark in chapter 8? And then it must not have ceased to exist in chapter 8, because here in chapter number 9 it's burning again. And the Bible says that when the smoke comes out of the bottomless pit, now smoke coming up out of the bottomless pit indicates that there is a fire burning somewhere in this earth. The earth has a fire burning, a huge fire burning in the earth. Because when that star, which I believe represents an angel, when the star gets the key to the bottomless pit and opens the bottomless pit, it's going to make daytime look like nighttime. The Bible says the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. So there the sun is dark again. But that verse specifies that the reason it goes dark is because of the smoke. In other words, the sun, it's more our viewpoint that will be affected than the sun itself in that particular passage. But it just goes to illustrate that the sun was burning again in chapter 9, even though it went dark in chapter 6, partially went dark in chapter 8. It's burning again in chapter 9, and it's darkened again by reason of the smoke of the pit. And then by the time you get to the 16th chapter of the book of Revelation, about verse number 8, the sun is burning brighter than it ever has before. So you see my point. The verses about the sun going dark do not indicate that the sun will not exist anymore. If that's the case, the sun ceases to exist 4 or 5 times in the book of Revelation alone, not to mention some of the other passages, Joel and Isaiah and some of these other prophets that mention it. Now, one other quick thing. There's a passage in the book of Revelation that says that the city will have no need of the sun or of the moon to shine in it. And some people, the Bible says the Lamb is going to be the light of the city. And so some people assume from that since the holy city will not need the light of the sun, that the sun will cease to exist. But my friends, that's just an assumption. Just because the city won't need the sun doesn't mean the sun won't exist anymore. There'll still be a sun, there'll still be a moon, there will still be stars in the heavens. Listen, my understanding from the Bible is that the earth and heaven and the stars, the sun and the moon will essentially exist forever. And I believe the Bible teaches this. And we could say so much more, and hopefully we will in the next few weeks and a lot of other topics as well. We hope you'll stay with us. Thank you. My friends, thank you so much for listening today. We enjoy this so much. It's our privilege to bring you these messages, and we hope you get something out of it. The Bible says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And Jesus said, go you into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. And so we believe we are trying to fulfill the Great Commission, and we want to get the word out. We would appreciate it so much if you would like and subscribe, help us spread the word, look for more of these videos, and we appreciate your encouragement and the encouragement we have received up till now. And we appreciate it so much, and we hope it's a blessing to you. It's our privilege to do it, and hope you remember the just shall live by faith. I'm Kirk Baker, and I pastor Church of God in Dandridge, Tennessee, New Beginning Church. Thank you so much for listening.